So if you go to different OECD countries, there's the odds that like half of the classroom are women, where in Japan it's still like below 30%. And for engineering degree, still the average of OECD is 32, but like Japan is half of that, so very, very few. So there's a huge gap, and the problem happens in middle and high school.
Asumi, thank you so much. Everyone, I'm here with Asumi Saito. Asumi was the third person I interviewed in my blog when I started it back in 2020. So Asumi, thank you so much for spending your time talking to a blogger who had 2 posts, I think, online at the time. And that was almost 4 years ago. A lot has happened in Japan. A lot has happened for you. So I thought I could take the opportunity of the YouTubes to talk to you, find out a little bit more about what's been happening for you. Perhaps if you just want to start off and tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me today. And I can't believe it's been 4 years since the post. And I haven't looked it back. I don't know what I wrote back then. Hope it's good.
It was all good.
Cool. So a little bit about myself. Lately, when I'm introducing myself, I call myself as an ex-nonprofit co-founder / soon-to-be PhD student. So do you want me to go chronological way from?
Well, maybe I'll start. So maybe I'll start when I met you. So back in, I think it was 2017, you'd finished your master's in the US and you were coming back to Japan. So maybe tell us a little bit about why did you decide to go study in the US first of all, and then we can kind of talk a little bit when you get back and how your career went from there.
Sure. Yes. So I'm born and raised in Japan. I did my undergrad in Japan, where I studied agriculture economics, and I wanted to study more about it. I was fascinated about statistics, actually, like more than tools, more than the area, and I wanted to study more. And back reflecting from now, I think the hardship that I had in my college life was gender gap or gender stereotype that I had. And I didn't feel comfortable in my college life. I didn't like my college life back then. Looking back from now, I think it was a great experience, but I can only say that because it's having like 10 years. And then also there are some like senpais like went to study master's or PhD in the States, and I learned that from them that you don't need to pay tuition. You can actually get experience as a research assistant, and I think that's really fascinating and interesting. So I decided to apply to the States, and and then since I wasn't really feeling good about college, I didn't have good credits, but I applied to some schools and I got funding opportunity, like funding offer from University of Arizona, which is the southwest of the States, almost close to the border of Mexico. So yeah, there I studied agriculture and resource economics. And from the day one, I was a research assistant, so that was really cool. I could do like data analysis, and as the more I study statistics, like I could do more sophisticated work. So it was very interesting. And again, like I was really interested in the tool, like statistical analysis. And towards the end of my master's, so like last semester, I realized that, there's this like whole area called machine learning, which I didn't really know, because what we do is called econometrics. And what economics does is to understand, to interpret the decision, the phenomenon. But what machine learning does is like predict the future from the past. And I think it was interesting. So I wanted to be data scientist. And that's where like I came back to Japan, started talking with a recruiter and met Paul and asked you to find the data science job for me.
Right. So that was the start of a career in data science in Japan then.
Mm-hmm. And then I worked a year and a half as a data scientist, but and then I I got a little bored about a project and I wanted to change the company. And then I landed in this AI startup called Fracta. It was really cool. They were making this AI, project for water treatment companies. So water treatment companies in Japan is run by very old people. So they wanted to transfer the skill to AI. And it was very interesting moment that actually caused myself to go to PhD right now. It's a synthesizer of science and engineering. So that was really cool. But back then, like what, I don't know, 2, 3 months after I joined a new company, not started, but like I met this co-founder on Twitter of nonprofits. Like soon I started co-founding with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was about to this event about coding for girls in middle and high school, and I was always interested in like why there are not many women in IT, and why there aren't many women in STEM in general. Because I was from only girls middle and high school, and I studied. Actually, I studied when I was in a startup because when I was in a startup, we were hiring data scientists, but I really didn't get any women's resume. It was all about like Japanese men, Indian men, Chinese men, other international women, and then we didn't get any Japanese women's resume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of kicked off maybe an exploration or interest into trying to understand what was going on. Why weren't women in these fields and applying for these jobs? And that led to you co-founding the nonprofit to address the issue by focusing on middle school and high school girls. Why kind of focus on, say, schoolgirls? Why did that make sense to you as the starting point to work on the problem?
So yeah, when I so working on high school and middle school students were very important to change, like make a structural change. So what actually causes few women in STEM in Japan is a university entrance exam or the system itself. So what I figured out while I was working why there are many women data scientists is that like in Japanese engineering department, only 16% of the students are women. So at the college level, it's already very, very low. And then when it comes to science department, it's 30 something, 32 or so, no, 27%, sorry. And actually for science degree and science major, the OECD average is already 52%. So if you go to different OECD countries, there's the odds that like half of the classroom are women, where in Japan it's still like below 30%. And for engineering degree, still the average of OECD is 32, but like Japan is half of that, so very, very few. So there's a huge gap, and the problem happens in middle and high school process. So folks who don't know about Japanese entrance exam, you need to make a decision when you're in almost like the end of freshman year of high school if you want to go for humanities, social science, or natural science, because you need to start, studying
preparing
very hard, on exam subjects. So by then, like, think about when you were 15 years old. What influenced you? Only your mom, dad, your sister, brother, probably, if you have older sister, brothers, and then school teacher, and that's it. You don't know much about the world. You don't know much about the programs. Yeah,
that's very young. Even someone if you get into university and then start picking majors and minor topics, which is kind of what happens in some countries, you're still very young to be trying to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. So if that's pushed back to sort of mid-teenage years in Japan, then that's tough. So also STEM jobs tend to be fairly well paying. So a lack of women in the STEM area then is kind of contributing to a gender pay gap. Once people are working as well, there's a lack of that money coming into being paid to women. So that's pushing down average salaries and things for women as well then.
Yeah, exactly. One of the reason or one of the logic we use to like give a policy advising to increase women in STEM was definitely gender pay gap, because gender pay gap in Japan is really huge. And part of the reason is that women are not engaged in those industries which makes a lot of money. And IT is such a lucrative job right now worldwide. And not encouraging women in there just increase pay like gender pay gap, or encouraging women in there makes it like easier to close the gender pay gap. And there is a study saying that how much women's jobs are, how to say, undertreated in Japan. So, for example, like job like nurse, there are so
Hmm.
many women in Japan, like nurse. And for other countries, a nurse's pay is like there's a premium paid for a nurse's job because it's a you require expertise and then you require a
Mm-hmm.
certificate or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But in Japan, the premium is canceled out of the gender pay gap. So how do you, I can say like the significance of premium of being like professional is canceled out by that like gender disadvantage in Japan.
Right.
This research tells how women's job is underestimated. So it really
Mm.
doesn't matter the job level or whatever. If there's so many women in the industry, that is like seen as a lower paying job in this country. It's
Right,
a huge
right,
problem.
right. So with the NPO that you founded, um, tell me a little bit about some of the programs. So you were, for example, programs to do boot camp, software engineering training, and things like that. Tell me a little bit more about those.
Yeah, so we had some programs running. We started with middle and high school students. So there's like 1 day program to create the website, and 3 month program to create an app to solve problem. And later on, we got a big funding, so we added a college program, which is so each program has each meaning. And then the first one, like 1 day program, is the first one we created, and then
Mm.
it was more about it's about expressing yourself as tech. So girls like, it's a stereotype, but girls like drawing or fashion or something does with appearance, and website is one of that. And in fact, like a lot of
Mm.
girls make their own website when they were kids. When in my time, so we created this program so that like girls can code freely about whatever their favorite thing. And then most of the girls like created like K-pop idols websites or their pet website, and that's the way I learned what teens listen as a music.
Right.
Yeah.
So along with teaching skills, you were also giving these girls an opportunity to kind of see if this is an area that would interest them. So you'd have some people might do a short course and think that was kind of fun, but not for me. Others would do the course and go, actually, this is something I want to pursue. But from what previous conversations, you told me that often girls are being very actively discouraged from pursuing that, and that could be for sort of parents or teachers. Could you tell me a little bit about that? Maybe some examples of some of the girls you worked with?
Sure. Yeah, we are dedicated to make a safe space for young women because there's so many messages that's telling them that they are not suitable for STEM area, and the stereotype is huge. One student told me that the math teacher was very intimidating, and then that's not specifically about girls, but the way he presented math was like, if you can't solve this problem, you're not suitable for math. And there's no such problem, no such math problem that like tests if you're suitable or not.
Right, right.
Yeah, and then I got DM that what was that? There's this sh- she was already a college student studying physics, but when she applied to physics, her parents said you can't go get married if you go to physics. And I'm like,
No one would want you.
yeah, there's no logic. It's not only about the skill, but it's about the confidence. They
Yeah.
often lack confidence, and just like the society's message is, so for example, if you're even if you're good at math and English and Japanese, teacher will say like, "Oh, you're so good at English. You should go to humanity major or I don't know, international relations, whatever."
Right.
And and then sometimes like women are so good at English that they don't realize their math is not that bad, and then they think, okay, I'm gonna go to English because I can't get much score as math. And it's all about like scores. It's not about their interest because the college entrance exam is exam, so you need to get high score to get into a good school, and that's another problem. OECD's international standardized assessment called PISA is actually showing that Japanese girls are top girls in science and math
Right.
among all the countries, among all the OECD countries. So if actually they decide their path based on their skill set, they all should go to STEM. Like Japan should be one of the highest like STEM country that has the largest women, but it doesn't go like that because their confidence doesn't keep up with like that.
Right. Right. And I remember when we spoke during COVID, you were doing your courses and training online. So you were able to reach girls basically all over the country. It wasn't the kind of, you have to be in Tokyo, where so many things are sort of pre-COVID physically in Tokyo. Did you have, or did you notice a difference in attitudes between, say, girls who were Tokyo, Osaka, big cities, and then girls who were in more rural areas?
That's actually a really good question because there wasn't much difference. Like I didn't see any significant difference between them. And it was a good news because regardless the area that you live, if you have if you have potential, if you have interest in a program, you can grow as much as you want. So of course, like some city girls know a lot more about some tech jobs, but that's only like minimum, like very small difference, and like over the 3 month. So that 3 month program often had a lot of different people from different area in Japan, and like it was very interesting to see like they interact with each other, they learn each other. Some come to Tokyo to see like her teammate that she never met before.
Right.
Over the 3 month. So yeah, it's really cool that we didn't set a certain persona, like originally we set a persona that like city, like somebody who live in a city, very aspirational, but it turned out there are so many aspirational girls all over, and the people live in a countryside actually need more encouragement or need this kind of space more than like girls live in a city.
Okay, so maybe there wasn't a difference in attitude, but maybe they actually needed more help to kind of pursue things.
Yeah. Well, yes. But at the same time, I would say the gender stereotype in Japan is so bad that even the like students live in city needs encouragement too. Especially like city have more competitive environment. So
Got it.
overall, what I got is not only about encouragement to STEM, but more about like this is the first place they are allowed to say whatever they thought. Because if you don't follow the rule, you don't follow what everyone says, you will be discriminated.
Right, right. The sticking up nail gets smacked with the hammer in Japan.
Oh
Yeah. Along with the training and education programs, you're also working on a kind of policy guidance or advice to government. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
yeah. Like we were lucky that we got some opportunities from the beginning, and there, yeah, my co-founder got an appointment for young whatever committee that's organized by cabinet office, and that was the great opportunity that we got into the policy advising in a national level. And then since then, like we found this congressperson who was in a chair of cabinet office back then, and then we presented the importance of investing women in STEM in early on. So the fact is that Japan actually make a huge funding on women researchers, but
Right.
the amount of budget that allocated for women before high school, before college, is 1% or less than 1% of the women researchers budget. So I would say if you don't grow this part, like high school part, like you can't have more like women researchers.
So it's about getting back to the root.
Mm-hmm.
Say root cause, the root area, which is the, that streaming off to humanities or science as a sort of a high school lecture. Yeah.
Like, or egg or chicken. Like egg or chicken discussion happens a lot in this kind of area because it's the feedback of, like, if you were women, I don't want to go STEM for your women. But in this case, like there's opportunity or there's a room to improve the egg part. So we presented that, and then luckily, somehow it hit like congressperson's mind, and then we got a chance to have like 3 lines about women and like young women in STEM, and to a very important document that Cabinet Office publishes every year. I don't remember the name in English, but it was very important because, like, with that document, the Cabinet Office will give the order to each ministry.
Right.
So I think, yeah.
Well, I mean, Womenomics was one of Abe's kind of policies to try and help drag Japan out of its decades-long stagnation. But very easy ideas or buzzwords, but actually then to get to implementing, I think what often is missed is the implementation, right? So I think what you and your group are doing then is actually going out and doing something practical, which is really where the rubber meets the road. So that's fantastic. You also had were able to get partnerships with tech companies and other types of partners. Tell me a little bit about some of the companies you're able to work with and what they contributed or what their interests were.
Yeah, the actual cause of me moving from data science job to full-time nonprofit was actually, we got a call from international companies like Lenovo and AWS, and they were like, hey, we have budget for APAC. And we figured out, like, Japan doesn't do anything about young women in STEM, and we want to invest to you. And I was surprised, but that was kind of reasonable for me because it's a huge problem that's dismissed in Japan. Not Japanese company, no Japanese people work on that area. Like, there are, of course, like, I can't say like no, but there are people who've been working hard on the area, but it wasn't a big movement.
Right.
And yeah, so luckily, like, our funding started relatively easier than other organization who's working in gender area. And it started from international companies because Japan delays and international companies have like global standard of HR metrics or something, and then Japan doesn't have much women in their office, so they want to do something in Japan. So that was really good, external encouragement. And then, like, gradually, like, after we did the good policy advising, or after we collaborated with tech companies, gradually we got calls from Japanese companies, and they started investing in us. And mainly, we get, of course, like, financial funding, but also some volunteers, which is really cool, and I still have connection with them. And also some like office tours. With this office tour, like, I got to go to different offices so many times that I didn't do when I was a college student. So it's cool. But oftentimes, like, tech companies are really cool, like, looking office. So a lot of students get excited too. And I imagine, like, to imagine themselves working in that environment encourage them to work harder on the degree too.
And to imagine that they could work in that environment, that the possibilities were there for them in the future. I get.
Also, it was important to have volunteers, like women volunteers from those companies, so that we can show the role models to them.
Role models, right?
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Once you get to companies' employment, you're still quite far downstream from the 15-year-old having to decide what they want to do. So, that seems to remain the area of focus. But obviously, having partners who will invest, having role models who can influence the teenagers who are making those kind of decisions, then obviously very important, all part of the complete package, really, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like we did the career session as well. And also, I think it's really important to have like feedback and community. So honestly, for middle school, high school students, sometimes like even if we did the office tour, they say like, "Oh, I can't imagine the like me working in the office. Like I don't know what it will be like. I want to see like college students. I want to see colleges." And I was like, "That makes sense because like that's so far from your like current life."
Right.
So after we created the college program, which is actually opening tech to students who didn't choose the natural science major, because like we wanted to expand opportunity to different area, different how to say group of people. Anyways, after we started the college program, like we raised them as a mentor to high school students, so that like there's a good feedback of mentoring loop, and of course like company volunteers mentor those college students. So that was a good like sisterhood environment we cultivated.
Fantastic. Okay. So you left that NPO maybe a year ago or so and took a kind of a new adventure, which is working in AI space and working in AI fairness. So lots of AI related buzzwords going around at the moment, as AI seems to be into everything, or at least everyone wants, well, some people want AI into everything, but could you explain what AI fairness is and what you've been doing? So you've been working for a Japanese AI startup, if that's right.
Yes. So actually, this is another reason I started the nonprofit. When I was a data scientist, I read this article saying the translation has gender bias. And I was surprised by the fact that the algorithm actually carries out the gender stereotype, but it makes sense because the algorithm just like is fed by the data that describes the real life. So that's
So it's the training data.
Yeah, training data. One of the largest news that went viral for fairness in AI was Amazon's hiring algorithm. So Amazon made an algorithm to hire people efficiently, and they figured out that the algorithm actually failed those people who went to women's college. And an American resume, unlike Japanese resume, you can't disclose your gender. But you know, like which schools are women's college, or like if you're a women's chess club, you will say like women's chess club. So there's a sign or label that identify you're a woman. And apparently, like a lot of engineers in Amazon are men, so not many people went to women's colleges, and that's the reason that they skipped. And I think they didn't ship the algorithm; they stopped developing the algorithm back then. So there's so many other problems, like racial problem, like economical problems about ethics or fairness in AI, but those are the area.
Okay, so as a fairness lead, what does that mean you do? Are you looking to find areas of bias and then sort of correct them through either the training data or the models or things like that?
So interestingly, actually, this company doesn't really deal with people's data. So
Okay.
those fairness problems often discussed more in insurance or finance or public sector. But my company right now does computer vision for how to say automatic inspection and factory. So it's like the target is like cog or screw or those things.
Widgets.
And yeah, hope they're all fairly treated. But like current trend, I found that current trend is like more than fairness in AI. It's called responsible AI. So when the AI is getting more and more in the real world, there are so many things that you need to care about. It's not only about the fairness, but it's about, for example, if it's involved in human and image, it's about the consent. It's about safeguard of getting like security risk, privacy risk. There's a news that Snapchat created this AI, and this AI could actually collect process information about the person, the user, through the chat. And most of the time, Snapchat is used by like 15 years old or something. So they are really like honest about like where do you live and like type that location there where they are. there's so many of those like scenarios that's unexpected, but gonna cause a lot of big problem. So there are 8 areas in responsible AI. I don't think I can name all, but one is of course fairness, one and discrimination. One is transparency, accountability, privacy, security, and also education a little bit because you need to educate users as well, not only
Right.
creators. So those things are the things actually AI developers needs to hold as a responsibility.
Got it. Okay. Looking at the future, a new adventure awaits, and you're leaving Japan soon and heading off to do your PhD, and you're heading back to the US. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, so when I left nonprofit, I actually wanted to go back to tech world and like move into AI startup was like one step, but I wanted to have more hands-on experience because I've been out from tech industry for a while. And so I'm going to this program called PhD in Geospatial Analytics at North Carolina State University. And what, so I had a year to think about what I want to study, and it was not actually gender. It was not actually fairness in AI, but it was more of agriculture economics and the water treatment factory startup that I spent less than a year.
So a little bit of a mix of the things in the past from working at Frecta and then your original masters as well.
That's interesting, but yes. And well, the side note, I really like studying gender, but I would rather practice as an activist more than studying as a professional. Yeah, so geospatial analytics is everything about satellite data and GIS, geography thing with tech and analytics. And I'm assuming my research project for the first year going to be flood prediction. So my advisor is in civil engineering department. Actually, I applied to civil engineering master's first, and he transferred me to this PhD because he thought this is suitable for me, and I wanted to do PhD in the future anyway. So that was perfect decision for me.
So what would you like to, skipping ahead, you've got your PhD, how would you like to use it? What are you thinking in the future? Is it remain in the US, back to Japan? What kind of ideas do you have?
Yeah, if I get a chance, I want to remain in the US or the Southeast area. So I think this is like geospatial analytics or flood prediction or anything related to water and land tied really close to the community there. And eventually it's going to be
the southeast of the US.
Yeah, it's going to be disaster prevention. And also this skill is transferable to Japan as well because we have a lot of water related disasters. And one thing I want to do is connect this skill with agriculture in some way. One of the reasons I applied for this program or civil engineering is that when I was in Arizona, I was solving this problem about how to use irrigation water efficiently in economics framework. And then later on, when I started working in IT industry, I figured out there's so many other tools, like tech tools that you can solve problem or visualize or simulate. And I thought it was super cool and expands the vision. And there's a reason that I was doing agriculture economics for 6 years. Like, it's very fundamental to human being. It's, food. And yeah, so I thought it was cool to tackle the same problem again with the new technology. So that's something that I really want to do in whatever way, wherever the location is.
I know whatever you decide to do, you're going to do a fantastic job. I think it's time to wrap up. So Asumi, thank you so much. It's been really good to catch up. I always enjoy chatting with you. I always learn something new. So that's fantastic. Best of luck in the States. If people want to get in touch with you, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, and maybe if people send you a DM and can get in touch with you there. I'll also post a link to our original interview from a few years ago. And once again, thanks so much, and all the best for the future.
Well, thank you so much. Feel free to contact me, and keep in touch.